This happened just a few months ago. I'm 32, and as a freelance photographer, I often seek inspiration in various locations for my travel blog. I arrived at the Boardwalk early one morning, hoping to capture the sunrise before the crowds arrived. It was quiet, just me and the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I wanted to shake off my recent creative block, but what I experienced there still haunts me. I wandered along the weathered wooden planks, snapping photos of neon-lit stalls. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty breeze on my skin. It was peaceful at first. Then I saw her, a woman selling handmade shells. She looked odd, almost out of place. I approached her stall. "Each shell has a story," she said, her voice low and steady. I shrugged, thinking it was just a sales tactic. I took a picture of the shells, feeling a chill run down my spine. I wasn't sure why I felt that way. Later, as I walked farther along the boardwalk, I thought about the woman. I still heard her words echo in my mind, but I dismissed it. I snapped photos of the colorful attractions, trying to shake off the unease. However, the air felt heavier, as if something was watching me. A few days passed. I returned to the boardwalk, determined to find inspiration. But things had changed. I began to hear whispers among the waves. It was faint, just a soothing sound that didn't belong. I couldn't make out the words, but they felt familiar. I stared at the ocean, my heart racing. The next day I found messages etched into the sand. They looked like they were meant for me. Words that spoke of my fears, my aspirations. I couldn't believe it. I brushed my fingers against the letters. The ocean breeze felt colder, and the whispers grew louder. I recorded everything but couldn't shake the feeling that I shouldn't be there. Toward the end of my visit, I caught glimpses of shadowy figures in the corners of my vision. Each time I turned, they vanished. It was unsettling. I pressed on, hoping to capture something original. Yet, nothing felt real anymore. My hands trembled as I shot photo after photo. I returned to the shell seller for the last time. She was gone, and a strange unease settled in my stomach. I stood alone at her stall, lost in thought. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Were these encounters figments of my imagination? Or was there something deeper tied to this boardwalk? That's when I heard the whispers again. They were louder now, swirling in my ears. I turned around, searching for the source. But I was still alone. I left the boardwalk, but I still wondered about it. As I walked to my car, I looked back one last time. I thought I saw the woman watching me from somewhere in the shadows, waiting. Then I heard a voice whisper my name. I turned around, and there was nobody there. The feeling of being watched never left me. I still can't shake it. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't focus on my photography. Every time I sat down to edit pictures or write, thoughts of the boardwalk invaded my mind. The whispers, the messages, the strange figure. It all felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I decided to return to the boardwalk, unable to shake the urgency gnawing at me. I needed to understand what was happening. As I approached the entrance, a thick fog rolled in off the ocean, wrapping around the wooden planks like a shroud. It felt suffocating. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed through the mist, my camera in hand. The boardwalk looked different. The colors were duller, the sounds muted. I felt like I had stepped into another world. I kept my eyes peeled for the shell seller, but she was, of course, absent. I could still hear the whispers, but this time they felt more like a low chant, rhythmically echoing through my mind. I shuddered and pressed on. I wandered past the stalls, snapping photos to document my experience. Then, out of nowhere, I discovered an old wooden box half buried in the sand. Curiosity piqued. I knelt down to inspect it. The box was decorated with carvings of waves, shells, and what looked like faces. I slowly pried it open. Inside, I found a collection of tarnished trinkets and weathered notes. I picked one up. It read, "Be careful what you wish for." My heart raced. I flipped through more notes, each one warning about the truth beneath the waves, or the fate of those who ignore the signs. A chill ran down my spine. Suddenly, the air felt electric. The whispers crescendoed into frantic voices, pulling me in every direction. I dropped the box and staggered back, panicking. The shadowy figures I had seen before began to emerge from the fog, drifting closer. They lingered just out of sight, watching me. I could barely breathe, the weight of their presence heavy against my chest. Then, amidst the chaos of the voices, I heard a clear tone. A woman's voice. It pierced through the noise. "Find the truth," it said, commanding yet soothing. I felt compelled to move, but I stood frozen, torn between fear and the pull of curiosity. As I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the distance. The shell seller. She was standing at the end of the boardwalk, her eyes locked on mine. I wanted to approach her, to demand answers, but I was rooted in place. That's when I noticed something odd. The waves began to crash more violently against the shore, and the fog thickened. My breath came in short gasps. I needed to run. Just before I turned to flee, I saw her raise a hand, and the shadows danced closer, flickering like candlelight behind her. I bolted, adrenaline surging through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to confront whatever lurked behind her knowing gaze. As I reached my car, I dared to look back one last time. The boardwalk was enveloped in an eerie silence. No shadows, no whispers, just a disquieting stillness. But as I drove away, I glanced into my rearview mirror. The shell seller was gone, but I still felt her presence, watching me from somewhere unseen. I couldn't escape the thought that this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of dread hanging over me. I tried to shake it off and focus on my photography, but the unsettling feeling only grew stronger. I couldn't get the image of the shell seller out of my mind. I knew I had to go back to the boardwalk. I drove back down, each mile feeling heavier than the last. The ocean's roar grew louder as I parked. The fog was already rolling in again, thick and oppressive. It felt like a warning, but I pushed through it. As I stepped onto the boardwalk, everything was strangely still. The air was thick with anticipation, and I could almost hear the echoes of my own footsteps. I looked around, searching for any sign of the shell seller. But once again, she was nowhere to be found. I made my way to the spot where I had found the box. The sand was still disturbed, but the box was gone. Panic surged in my chest. Had I imagined it? I knelt down, digging my fingers into the damp earth, but I found nothing but grains of sand. Then came a sound, soft and haunting. I turned to follow it, instinctively raising my camera. The whispers returned, but this time they were clearer. They formed words, beckoning me to move deeper into the fog. I squinted against the mist, trying to make sense of the shapes dancing just out of sight. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of the shell seller's stall. My heart raced. The brightly colored shells were now muted, duller than before, as if the vibrance of that place was slowly fading. I approached, every step bringing a rush of memories, images of that strange encounter, her eyes piercing through me. As I reached her stall, I grabbed a shell, wanting to feel its smooth surface against my skin. But as I picked it up, I noticed something odd. Scrawled inside the shell in jagged handwriting were the words, "Follow your shadow." I froze. My shadow? I looked around, expecting to see if anyone else was there, but I was utterly alone. The whispers grew louder, rising to a fever pitch. I could barely breathe. I turned to leave, but panic gripped me again. I felt as if something was right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just shifting shadows dancing at the edge of my vision. Just before I bolted, I heard that voice again. The woman's voice, clearer now. "The tide is coming," it warned. I sprinted back toward the beach, desperate for the safety of my car. But as I reached the edge of the boardwalk, icy water lapped at my feet. The tide had risen unnaturally quick. The fog thickened again, closing in and warping the landscape around me. I stumbled back, but the ground beneath my feet felt unstable, shifting as if the boardwalk itself were moving. That's when I saw it. A figure emerging from the fog, stepping purposefully toward me. A tangible chill ran through my body. I couldn't discern their features, only that they were watching me intently. Terror clawed at my throat as realization hit me. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. Whatever was happening here had drawn me in, and there was no escaping it. The shadows, the whispers, they were all part of something bigger. I needed to find answers. But deep down, I feared what those answers might reveal. I stood frozen, my breath hitching as the figure stepped into view. The fog hung thickly around them, but I could make out dark, flowing garments that seemed to absorb light. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity rooted me in place. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice quavering. The figure paused, tilting their head slightly, as if considering my question. I could barely see their face, but I felt the weight of their gaze. "The tide comes for those who linger," the figure said, their voice low and resonant, echoing the woman from before. My heart pounded. Was this another warning? Before I could respond, the ground shifted beneath my feet. Panic surged again as I stumbled backward, falling into the damp sand. I looked up, but the figure was gone. Only the echoes of their words remained, like an ominous lullaby in my ears. I scrambled to my feet and glanced toward the ocean. The waves were crashing closer now, clawing at the shore with alarming ferocity. I couldn't ignore the sense of urgency pressing on me. Whatever was happening, I felt I was on borrowed time. I turned quickly, scanning the boardwalk for any sign of help or something familiar. I needed an anchor in this surreal landscape. That's when I noticed another stall further down the boardwalk, its presence unsettling and out of place, almost like a mirage. I approached cautiously, squinting through the fog. It looked abandoned, with shells scattered everywhere, but a glimmer in the corner caught my eye. I bent down to pick it up, revealing a small glass vial filled with a swirling blue liquid. My thoughts raced. Was this connected to the shell cellar? As I held the vial up to the feeble light filtering through the fog, a shadow flitted across my vision. I glanced up, catching just a glimpse of a figure fleeing deeper into the mist. A rush of adrenaline propelled me forward, curiosity igniting my fear. "Wait!" I shouted, sprinting after the figure. I could feel the tide rising behind me, its cold grip inching nearer and nearer. The world felt disorienting, the boardwalk twisting and turning as I chased after an unknown ghost. I rounded a bend, and there they were, a pair of footsteps leading into the mist. Without thinking, I followed them, heart pounding, breath quickening. The path twisted and turned, pulling me further into the depths of the fog. Just when I thought I was alone again, a voice cut through the silence. "You shouldn't have come back." The voice was sharp and cutting, a stark contrast to the soft whispers I had heard before. I stopped in my tracks, dread pooling in my stomach. I had more questions now than when I started. The figure emerged slowly from the shadows of the fog. "Do you want to know why you're here?" They stepped closer, their face shrouded, but I felt the intensity of their gaze drill into me. I started, but the ground trembled again, pulling my focus back to the shoreline. The tide roared, a fierce wave surging dangerously high. "Listen," they warned, urgency seeping into their tone. "You need to find your shadow before it's too late." And just like that, they disappeared again, leaving me alone with the sound of crashing waves and whispers in the air. I was left staring at my own dim shadow thrown against the wooden slats of the boardwalk, feeling the weight of something hidden just below the surface. That's when I heard the familiar voice again, more insistent this time. "Follow your shadow." A chill shot down my spine. I had to make a choice, and I had to make it quickly. The urgency in my chest pushed me forward. I had to follow my shadow. It felt absurd, yet a part of me knew this could be the key to understanding what was happening. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. The mist curled around me, a living thing, whispering secrets I couldn't quite grasp. I glanced down, my shadow flickering strangely in the light. It appeared elongated, distorted as if it were struggling against an unseen force. Fear wrapped around me as I hesitated, but the crashing waves served as a reminder that time was passing. I needed to act. Moving deeper into the fog, I felt more than heard the whispering. I strained to catch individual words, but they slipped away like grains of sand. I focused on my shadow, willing it to guide me. It moved away from the boardwalk and toward the stretch of sand just beyond. As I followed, something caught my eye. A shimmer beneath the surface of the wet sand. I knelt down, heart racing. It was another vial, this one different. Dark as night, but with an inner light pulsing and swirling. Without thinking, I grabbed it. What did it mean? Was this part of whatever was unfolding around me? The voices grew louder now, overlapping, filling my mind. Find it. It waits. I shut my eyes to push out the noise. When I opened them again, I spotted my shadow, pointing toward the surf. The logic was flawed, but desperation had drowned it. I stepped toward the water. Suddenly, the unmistakable shape of a figure emerged from the waves, moving with unnatural fluidity. I froze. The figure glided closer until I could see it clearly. It was another person, but their face was shrouded in shadows. "Your shadow calls," it said, voice echoing as though multiple voices were speaking in unison. "You've come to reclaim what was lost." Reclaim? I didn't even know what was lost. But a deep instinct told me to move closer. The figure beckoned as the tide surged. "You must choose," they said. My heart hammered in my chest. Choose what? The water foamed, rushing up the shore as I scanned the surroundings, desperately seeking answers. But something felt wrong. I didn't trust this figure, even though a part of me was drawn to them. But before I could back away, the world shifted again. The ground shuddered. The waves crashed higher, threatening to pull me in. With a surge of panic, I turned and ran back to the boardwalk, stumbling over the shifted boards. As I clambered up, the voices quieted, replaced by a singular urgency. "Find your shadow," they echoed, a warning that crackled in the salt air. When I reached the pathway, I stopped. My shadow was gone, lurking somewhere in the depths of the fog. Fear and confusion merged into a single, overwhelming desire. I had to find it. The words from the figure struck me anew, igniting a burning question. What happened if I didn't? Before I could consider the implications, I felt a presence beside me. I turned sharply, but all I saw was the shadow creeping back into view, stretching out as if it were beckoning me with newfound determination. And then I heard it again, crisp and clear. Time is slipping away. This time I didn't hesitate. I dove back into the fog, my heart pounding, desperate to uncover the truth that hid beneath the surface before the tide claimed me completely. The fog thickened around me as I stepped back into its embrace. My heart raced, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. I needed to find my shadow. I stumbled forward, scanning the haze for any sign of it. Nothing but the faint glow of the moon above and the constant roar of the waves. Then, I heard it again. A soft whisper, barely audible over the crashing surf. "This way." My shadow seemed to pulse slightly ahead of me, almost alive, as if urging me on. With every step, the uncertainty grew heavier, but I had no time to second-guess myself. The ground felt uneven beneath my feet. Just as I took another step, I heard a loud crack. I looked down and saw that the wooden slats of the boardwalk had splintered, a gap forming between two boards as if something below was shifting. I backed away, unsure of what to do. "Stay with your shadow," the whisper insisted. Stomach churning, I looked around. That's when I saw it, a figure emerging from the mist again. This one moved differently, gliding along the sand with purpose. I tensed, grip tightening on the vial I still held. "You're getting closer," it said, voice raspy yet oddly familiar. "Who are you?" I croaked, trying to sound brave while fear curled tight in the pit of my stomach. "You know me," they replied. There was something about the way they spoke that made my skin prickle. They took a step closer, and moonlight broke through the fog just enough for me to catch a glimpse of their face. My heart dropped. It was someone I recognized, someone I thought I'd left behind long ago. "Why are you here?" I shouted, instinctively stepping back. I felt vulnerable, exposed under their gaze, as if they could look straight through me. "Because of your choices," they replied, their voice shifting back into a chorus of whispers. "You've begun to unravel the threads." I didn't understand. There was an urgency, a finality in their tone that made my skin crawl. What threads? What are you talking about? The figure smiled, but it didn't reach their eyes. Connect the dots before they disappear. The shadows are waiting. With every word, I felt as if I was being pulled deeper into a nightmare. I turned away, desperate to escape both the figure and the shadows that danced at the edges of my vision. But as I stumbled backward, I caught sight of something glittering just beneath the boardwalk. Another vial, similar to the one I already had, but this one was bursting with light. I felt drawn to it, compelled to grab it. As I reached down, the ground shook again, but this time it felt more like a warning, like the earth itself was telling me to get out. Panic surged, and I lunged for the vial, clutching it tightly. But when I turned back, no one was there. The figure had vanished without a trace, leaving a silence heavy with promise and dread. Suddenly, I felt it, a sharp tug at my feet. My shadow was pulling me closer to the edge of the boardwalk, toward the dark water below. Before I could react, the wood beneath me cracked again, and I lost my balance. That's when everything went dark. I woke with a start, the cold sand scraping against my skin. My heart raced as I pushed myself up, blinking hard to clear the fog from my mind. Where was I? The boardwalk loomed above me, but the familiar sound of the waves was now a distant hum, almost like a heartbeat. I barely registered my surroundings before scrambling to my feet. I had dropped the glowing vial when I fell. Panic surged as I looked around, searching the shadows for any sign of it. "Don't lose it," a voice whispered from the haze. My shadow writhed behind me, almost playful, nudging me to move. "Where are you?" I called out, feeling stupid the moment the words left my mouth. But the reply was silence. Gritting my teeth, I ventured along the edge of the boardwalk. I could hear the soft crunch of sand beneath my feet, and with each step, my unease grew. The whisper I had heard earlier echoed in my head. Connect the dots. But what did that even mean? Then, I saw the glowing vial lying half buried in the sand. Relief rushed over me as I bent down to grab it. The moment my fingers wrapped around it, a jolt of energy surged through me, as if the vial pulsed with life. Suddenly, the ground shook again, more violently this time. I stumbled, barely catching myself on the railing of the boardwalk. My breath quickened. Something felt very wrong. "Stay close to your light," my shadow urged, almost teasingly. Before I could respond, the ground beneath the boardwalk let out a terrifying groan. And then it happened. An enormous burst of water shot up like a geyser from below, spraying everything with a chilling mist. I gasped, gripping the railing tighter as the water crashed down. "Look!" the voice returned, and I followed it. Across the water's surface, shadows danced against the moonlit waves. They were moving like a tide, like something alive. "Watch out!" I heard a cry. I turned just in time to see the edge of the boardwalk collapsing, splintering away right where I had stood seconds before. In a panic, I rushed back, stumbling toward a narrow path that veered into the trees at the edge of the boardwalk. My breath came fast, each inhale sharp with fear. An urgency pushed me forward, but then I stopped. Voices drifted toward me from behind, from the direction of the shadows. As the chaos settled and the crashing waves faded once more, the whispers became clear. Same path, same mistakes. I shivered, recognizing the tone of the voices. They were fragmented yet familiar, stitching together memories I could barely recall. I couldn't stay here. I turned and tore through the underbrush, pushing past branches and tripping over roots. I felt the weight of the vials in my pockets and the shadow behind me, both complicit in my escape. I ran, heart pounding in time with the pulse of something deeper. I didn't know what was behind me, but I knew I had to confront it. As I burst into a small clearing, the shadows erupted around me, forming shapes that swayed as if alive. The whispers grew louder, but all I could feel was a cold sweat creeping down my back. And then I heard it. My name, called in a voice I'd hoped never to hear again. A chill shot through me. "Stay away from me," I screamed, voice cutting through the night. But the shadows advanced, and suddenly, I wasn't just fleeing. I was facing the past head-on. I braced myself against a tree, heart racing as the shadows twisted closer. "Stay away!" I shouted again, backing up. Each syllable felt weaker under the weight of that voice. I could still hear it echoing, clear as day. but the words felt heavy and charged. "Do you remember?" it called, the shadows contorting into familiar shapes. Faces from my past, lost in time but not forgotten. I shuddered. "We've been waiting for you." My pulse quickened as I turned to find a way out, but the moonlight seemed dimmer on the edge of the clearing. It felt like the shadows were absorbing it, darkening the space further. What were they? My heart slammed against my chest. "Connect the dots," the voice whispered again, more insistent this time. I strained to think, each memory a flicker, faces and moments slowly piecing together like a long-lost puzzle. But the more I tried, the more panic bubbled within me. I had to focus. Each time I'd faced a fear in the past, it had lost its power over me. I took a deep breath, recalling the last time I had felt brave. I could do this. "Enough!" I yelled, my voice steadying more than I expected. "You're not real. You can't hurt me." The shadows recoiled slightly, hesitating. I seized the moment and glanced to my right. An opening in the trees beckoned. It looked narrow, a way out, but also risky. I felt the vial's weight in my pocket, a reminder of what I might be capable of. "Go ahead, run," the voice taunted, a mirthless laugh following. I grasped the vial tightly, preparing to dash for the trees when something caught my eye. In the dim light, nestled against the trunk of a nearby tree, I spotted a small, faded photograph, barely visible beneath a layer of dirt. I stepped closer, my feet crunching on leaves. I crouched down and picked it up. There was a girl, her smile bright, framed by the warmth of the sun. But as I stared closer, the girl's eyes pierced through me. That's when I saw it. A boy standing beside her, his face unmistakable. My heart sank. Why had I buried this memory? "Do you remember this day?" The voice came again, even more urgent now, almost desperate. "You can't run from the truth." I looked back at the shadows, feeling them pull me in. The photograph burned in my hand. The boy was a part of that day, a day I had wanted to forget. "No!" I yelled, adrenaline surging as I turned on my heel. I had to escape this feeling, this memory. I sprinted toward the gap in the trees, ignoring the whispers that clawed at my mind. But just as I lunged forward, a sharp pain coursed through my chest. I gasped. The shadows were trying to hold me back. I could feel their grasp tightening. Then everything went dark. For just a moment, I was enveloped in silence. When clarity returned, I was still in the clearing, but now I was alone, completely, unnervingly alone. Had I broken free? Or had the shadows deceived me? The only thing I could hear was the distant roar of the ocean, and I was left with that haunting photograph still clutched tightly in my hand. What now? I had uncovered a piece of the past, but it felt more like a burden than a clue. As I scanned the darkness for the next step, a cold realization hit me. I wasn't done. That voice would come back, and so would the shadows. I stood still for a moment, my breath shallow. The clearing was unnaturally quiet, the kind of stillness that felt heavy, as if the world was holding its breath. I glanced down at the photograph again. The boy's face sent a chill down my spine. I had to know what this all meant. I shoved the photo into my pocket and took cautious steps towards the edge of the clearing, my senses heightened. The shadows lingered just beyond the trees, not gone, but waiting. I turned to look back, but saw nothing but the silvery moonlight filtering through the branches. The ocean's roar was louder now, a relentless beating against the shore, like a heartbeat echoing my own dread. Nervous energy buzzed in my limbs as I stepped into the darkness of the trees. I wanted to find safety, but a part of me yearned to uncover more. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. I edged forward, careful not to make a sound. As I entered the thick underbrush, something rustled nearby. I froze, heart racing again. Had the shadows followed me? I held my breath, straining to listen. The rustle grew into a low whisper, mixed with hurried footsteps. It was too close. "Is someone there?" I called out, hoping to sound braver than I felt. My voice faltered, but the noise stopped abruptly. In the silence, I shifted my weight nervously. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the dim light. It was a girl, her expression haunted, eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice trembling slightly. "Why not?" I asked, glancing back toward the clearing, momentarily forgetting my trepidation. "What's out there?" "The shadows," she replied, looking over her shoulder as if expecting them to emerge. "They know your name. They know your past." My stomach twisted at her words. "How do you know that?" "It's why I'm here," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm searching for someone. Just like you." I felt my heartbeat quicken. Her presence was unsettling, a chilling reminder of my own fears. "Who?" "I don't know," she whispered, voice growing frantic. "But they're always near when you start to remember." Before I could respond, she turned and ran deeper into the trees. The sight of her figure disappearing sent panic jolting through me. I should follow. I should demand answers. But instead, I stood frozen, caught between the desire to chase her down and the creeping dread that tightened around my chest. Then I heard it. An echoing laugh from the shadows, a familiar voice blending with the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. "Did you think you could escape?" My pulse quickened as I backed away from the shadows, the laughter morphing into a cacophony of whispers. I turned toward the direction where the girl had vanished. "Wait!" I shouted, but she was gone, the darkness swallowing her whole. The laughter continued, each sound reverberating through me, igniting a sense of urgency to escape. I didn't understand what had just happened, but I felt the truth tightening its grip around my mind. I took a deep breath and ran. Each step felt heavier, the shadows lurking just behind me. Whatever this was, it was far from over. I had to confront it. Yet, as I dashed through the trees, I realized I was no longer just running from shadows. I was running straight into my past. Only God knew what awaited me on the other side. The trees thinned out, and suddenly I was out of the underbrush, back on a familiar stretch of the boardwalk. I doubled over, panting as I caught my breath. The fog rolled in thicker than ever, swallowing up the night. The air buzzed with anticipation, laced with the pulsating whispers that hung in the air like ghosts. I glanced over my shoulder. The shadows still lurked, darting between the edges of my vision. Whatever was chasing me, it was insistent. I could feel an energy pulling at me, its tether growing tighter, stronger. I turned back to the boardwalk, unsure of my next move. "Find your shadow!" The voice from earlier reverberated through my mind, heavy with urgency. I looked down, half expecting to see my shadow stretching long behind me, succumbing to the night. Instead, it wavered. No longer just a dark imprint, but a fluid shape shifting against the wooden planks. It felt alive. A figure emerged from the fog, their form just a silhouette at first. "You've returned," it said, the resonance of the voice both familiar and foreign. My heart dropped. Recognition tangled in my gut. The shell seller. She stepped closer, obscured in shadow yet somehow illuminated, as if the mist danced in her presence. "You again," I muttered, irritation mingling with dread. "What do you want from me?" "Truth," she replied, looking directly at me now. "The tide comes for those who do not understand their past. You've begun to piece it together, but you're still blind to the core." "I don't even know what I'm piecing together," I exclaimed, frustration spilling over. "You say to follow my shadow. But how do I do that if I can't even remember what it is?" She pointed toward the churning waves, shimmering with a light that pulsated to the rhythm of the whispers. "It lies beneath, in the reflection of your choices. You can reclaim it if you're willing to confront your own depths." A crushing weight settled in my chest as her words sank in. Memories swirled around me, faces, places, moments buried deep, and I could feel the truth beckoning. Did I have the strength to face it? In that moment, doubt clawed at my will, nagging at the corners of my mind. The whispers grew louder, converging into a chaotic orchestra, each voice vying for my attention. I could feel the shadows again, circling me, eager to draw me into their depths. "Choose," the shell seller urged, her voice slicing through the din. "Will you finally embrace what lies beneath?" Gripped by a sudden surge of clarity, I knew I couldn't run anymore. The shadows represented the chaos of my past, the choices I wished I could forget. What if the only way forward was to go back, I nodded, heart thudding loudly in my chest. I will face it. Then step into the water, she said, gesturing toward the waves crashing against the shore. As if responding to her command, the ocean began to surge, drawing me in. The shadows parted, and I stepped forward, each breath heavy with the weight of what I was about to confront. With each step, the cold water lapped against my legs, teeming with the energy of the past. The whispers crescendoed into a frantic hum. I felt them pulling me down, deeper into the current. Connect the dots, I repeated, my mantra against the chaos. Suddenly, I stopped, realizing I had entered a trance-like state, the world around me blurring. In my mind's eye, I could see fragments of my past, shards of memories piercing through the fog. The photograph, the boy. Fragments began to connect, the recollections coalescing. And then I felt it, that swift tug against my soul, the very thing I had buried for too long. With clarity, I remembered the choices I had made, the guilt, the loss. I realized it wasn't just shadows I feared. It was the truth I thought I had escaped. Trembling, I dove beneath the waves, the water enveloping me in an otherworldly silence. I opened my eyes, finally swimming into the depths, searching for the shadows that had once haunted me. They flickered in and out, teasing me, but I pushed forward. Amidst the chaos, my fingers brushed against something smooth, icy. A shell, unmistakably one of the handmade pieces from the vendor. As I clutched it, a sense of warmth flowed through me, igniting a connection to everything I once felt and feared. Find your shadow. The voice echoed more distinctly now, rising above the overwhelming tide. I spun around, searching through the memory-laden waters. The boy. I needed to confront him. In a surge of adrenaline, I struggled against the current, grasping onto fragments of clarity that floated just out of reach. This would be my moment of reckoning. I needed to see him one final time, to let go of the past that had kept me tethered. And then I saw him. A ghostly figure standing among the shadows, his face illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the waves. My heart pounded, the realization dawning that I wasn't just running from the past. I was running toward it. Come back, he whispered, extending a hand filled with light that pierced through the darkness. Filled with courage, I surged forward, grasping his hand. The shadows writhed around us, desperate to keep us apart. But I held on. In that moment I felt it. A release, a shattering of chains binding me to my fears. The weight lifted, and as I closed my eyes, the tide around us fell silent. When I opened them again, I was standing on the shore, the water calm and still. The cloud of fog began to dissipate, revealing a serene landscape bathed in first light. There was no shadow chasing me now, only the promise of a new dawn. But the questions remained. Who had I become? And would I ever truly understand the connection between the shadows and the truth? As I turned to leave the boardwalk for good, I couldn't shake the feeling that even as I walked away, the echoes of the past would linger just out of reach. I moved to a different town shortly afterward, determined to start anew. But sometimes, late at night, the whispers return, and I'm left wondering if shadows can ever truly be outrun.